Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast with PJ and Mike. Now find yourself a seat at their table.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast with PJ and Mike. I'm PJ.
And I'm Mike.
And today's a comic book episode. One of my favorite things to talk about are comic books. We're both going to be reviewing some graphic novels and comic books that are coming out. Mikey will be reviewing the Rolling Stones and comics. She's showing on the screen right there. And I will be talking about DC's initiative, their summer initiative called The Summer of Superman. So we have some real good stuff to talk about when it comes to comic books. So how's that book? Tell me about your book.
Yeah. So, folks, I got the Rolling Stones and comics, and PJ actually got me this book. PJ's such a great friend, a best friend of mine, and I think he just surprised me with this, actually. I don't think it was like a Christmas or anything. I think PJ's very thoughtful like that, even since we were kids.
Yeah, I'll tell you how I found this book. I was doing my regular orders for the shop, right? And by the way, late breaking news, as of yesterday, I just re-upped the lease for another 2 years, so the comic shop is not going anywhere. We are secure. Thank you. We are secure through June of 2027. So as I was doing my orders anyway for the shop, I came across this book, this biography book, comic book for the Rolling Stones, and I had never seen it before. It's not usually the kind of books I get into the shop because not everyone's looking for that kind of stuff. But when I saw it, and what caught me wasn't the name. I saw the picture on the cover. I'm like, that looks like Mick Jagger. And then I saw it was a Rolling Stones comic book, and I said, I know the perfect person that would love this book. So as soon as I saw it, I had to get it for you because I knew it would be right up your alley. And we're always looking for content to talk about, and I love talking about comic books. So it seemed like the universe put that in my path.
I loved it, really enjoyed it. I just want for folks at home, I'm a really giant Stones fan. I was raised on the Stones. My dad's a huge Stones fan. For those who are watching at home, I actually have a wooden cutout of the Stones and their British flag. Yeah, my father-in-law got me that. But anyway, let me tell you guys how more about this book. So it's been published by NBM Graphic Novels. So I'll say it's compiled by the author. His name is Seka, S-E-K-A. He's an author. He's written 30 other graphic novels. So let me tell you a little bit more about just the publisher. So NBM is the leading critically acclaimed independent graphic novel publisher, showcasing the diversity of comics from North America and Europe. In 1988, it took over its own distribution. It became the first distributor of Dark Horse graphic novels into that market. Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah. And just to, like I said before I get into the book, just other works that people might be into by this publisher in terms of like music related. They have the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd, Bob Marley, Amy Winehouse, and Willie Nelson. So they do a lot of music ones, which is pretty cool. But to tell folks about this, obviously, it's about the Rolling Stones. It kind of goes in like chronological order of like their career. So how they first met. And then, like, basically till present day. I think this book was published in 2017 and then, like, reprinted in 2020. So there's 21, like, essays and there's 21, like, comics, okay?
Right.
So what happens is, like, there'll be, like, an essay that says, like, where, like, Keith Richards met Mick Jagger, right? And they kind of tell you the story, how the band started, Brian Jones, blah, blah, blah. And then they have a comic that kind of shows that story play out, you know?
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah. It's pretty cool. So yeah, it's like really funny. Depending on the previous essay, the story, the style of the artwork kind of reflects that. So like, let's say when they talk about when Brian Jones passed away, that's like very dark. You know, the colors are kind of muted. It's when they have more, I would say, lighthearted stories with his drug busts or the fool around with girls. It's more cartoonish. There's caricatures of them. Or just kind of just traditional, like comic book, artwork.
Right.
Superhero style. So you get all different types. It's not just one, art
Right.
style. Different colors and blah blah blah. But yeah, there's all different. Like I says, there's all different kinds of stories. Like I said, it's chronological order, but And I read a bunch of books about the Stones, Life by Keith Richards, and like I said, my dad always collected like their tour books. They have a book that's called like the Final Tour from like the '80s. I'm like, I don't think it
That
was the
wasn't that
final.
final.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, but I think one of the things I like a lot about the book is there's like it there's a lot of good, like, I'll say, like, small information where, like, in a regular book about them, they wouldn't really expand upon it, So, like,
Right.
they'll be like, "Oh, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, they met each other, like, they met each other earlier, like, in elementary school, but when they got, I'll say, officially friends is when they
Hmm.
met each other on a train." This will kinda get more deeper into that. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know that," and,
Hmm.
um, it's great. Or, like, at one point, Brian Jones, he originally started the band. He was like the original leader. And actually, I'm gonna share some later, some cool quotes and tidbits from the book. Um, but it kind of just tells you how like he was like their manager at the time, and like they didn't know how to approach this one show about like getting paid more because they're getting a bigger crowd. And he's like, guys, don't worry, I'll negotiate. They end up getting fired from it. So like they had this regular gig there, and they end up anyway. They illustrate that too in there. I will say, um, I think this book is great for diehard fans like myself, and also like someone who's like a casual, honestly, like casual. Like if you're like a casual fan, oh, I like their songs and all that stuff.
Right.
It's not super long, and you'll laugh. Like there's a lot of these stories are funny in here. Um, so it's like it's dark. I mean, yes, certain things, I talk about Altamont. For those not familiar, that was kind of like, um, think of Woodstock, and this happened after Woodstock, and it was like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane was there, and someone got murdered there. And it was actually at that show, they talk about in the book, that was the first show where they play Sympathy for the Devil. And sometimes they feel like maybe that's what, it was satanic, and that made, obviously that's not true. The Hells
Right.
Angels were their bodyguard. I mean, they were the security for the show. It didn't help. Everyone's on drugs. It was a recipe for, the whole show was a recipe for disaster. It was a free concert. Everything that you could do to plan a show, they did. But anyway, yeah. So if you're a casual Stones listener, I think you would really enjoy the book. Like I said, it's short, and it's funny. And like I said, they talk about other bands too. Beatles are in here, just that whole
Yeah.
scene, the blues scene, and everything. So, but I definitely recommend it for
And
Stones fans
it's a
or music
straight
fans.
up like telling of the band's history. It's not
Yep.
like at some point, Jagger's getting bit by a radioactive
No, no, no.
guitar and becoming Guitar Man
That's
or
a
anything like that.
no. That's a
Yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah. All biographical. So it's all legit information too. And like I said, I'm not gonna go too historic about like the band, but like just like how like Mick Taylor came after Brian Jones, and after Mick Taylor left, they got um Ron Wood, and then from there later on, I talk about when Bill Wyman left, and that was like the original bass player. And
Hmm.
it's funny, they just talk about two just obviously they got a lot of girls back in the day, but believe it or not, um, I knew this already, but for folks at home, the person who actually, uh, I mean, they all got a lot of girls. I guess the drummer was the most loyal, but the bass player, Bill Wyman, actually took full advantage of being
Hmm.
a rock star. I think he had like 300 girls in like 1 year. So,
Jeez. Jesus.
so, and the book, and I'm going to tell you, PJ, a little bit more about Bill Wyman, the bass player. I did not know this, so the book told me this. So, he was the first person to coin the term groupie.
Wow.
Really?
So, so it makes sense. The guy who got took full advantage of
Pictures of the
groupies,
groupies
yeah,
invented the word.
he invented the
Ah,
word. Yeah. And I just want to share some other tidbits about the book, PJ. I think about the band, and just also about just some rock and roll stuff. So the term, I didn't know this, but I guess there's two origins of how the term Rolling Stone came from. So I think everyone's familiar with a Rolling Stone gathers no moss.
yep.
But in the book, basically the first story they share has nothing really. The band isn't even in it. It's basically about slavery when they took slaves from Africa to here. They would swallow a stone, and then they would, a bowel would pass it, and that would be a way they keeping a keepsake. So yeah, that's the first kind of comic
Hmm.
entry in here. Yeah, I guess
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Their first show in 1962, they didn't have the full lineup. They didn't have the classic lineup that we know. But their original drummer was Mick Avery, and I did not know this. Mick Avery is the former member of the Kinks. So if you know the song "You Really Got Me," he became obviously later on he joined that band. Um, yeah, when they had their first real show as a band, the classic lineup, as we know, Brian Jones and Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts, blah blah blah. There was only 6 people at their show, and it was so cold they wore their coats while they performed. I didn't know that. I know their first show, but I didn't realize that few many people were there. I also didn't know this that their first manager, Andrew Lug Oldman, in all the books I read, they never said his age. He was 19 years old. Could you imagine that? I mean, they were all young, the Stones and all that,
Yeah, but
but
still, like you would think
yeah,
someone with a little experience would
exactly.
be
He was,
taking
yeah,
this band. Yeah.
yeah. And they were saying, and actually in this book, I didn't, like I said, this book, like I said, I read a bunch of other books about them. This one does, like I said, goes into they go more detail into the smaller details. That makes sense. Um, and I knew this part already, but he actually helped invent the rivalry between the Beatles and the Stones.
Really?
So yeah, because the Beatles actually gave the Stones their first like song, I guess, first hit. So they were actually buddies. But at the time, um, when the originally, let me get the passage. I'm gonna read it out loud. Originally, um, a different recording company, Decca Records, they end up signing the Stones, and I'll just read what Keith Richards wrote. It goes, and then Andrew, like I said, their manager, got us signed with Decca Records, quick as lightning. The thing that was wonderful and marvelous was that Dick Rowe at Decca had turned down the Beatles, which I knew this already, but I had never heard this quote. He said, "Was he going to say no twice?" No. In a way, we knew we had them before we even began negotiating. That's the reason we were able to get what we wanted. So basically, when the Beatles blew up, they didn't want to pass on the Stones because they knew they already had a
Right.
following and all that stuff. But I didn't realize he was so young, that manager. And like I said in this book, they kind of detail it more than other books I've read. Like they really had like in terms of like publishing rights, they had a lot of the song credits. Like everyone famously knows, the Beatles didn't really own a lot of their recordings. So they had a sweet deal. Later on, they say how that kind of got finagled, and the Stones didn't actually own all their catalogs. Certain songs they owned it after a certain time period. Yeah, it was good. Um, there's another great quote Mick Jagger has famously said in this book. I didn't know this. I hope they don't take us for a rock and roll band because originally they had advertised themselves as a jazz band. That was a big thing.
Well, wasn't he heavily influenced by Howlin' Wolf? Isn't that a?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Muddy Waters, all those guys.
Yeah.
Chuck Berry, all that stuff. But they wanted to keep, they didn't want to be because
Right.
back then, rock and roll seemed like, wasn't as legit yet,
Right.
So, I thought this was actually a really cool quote. So this is Marianne Faithfull. This is Mick Jagger's one of his first girlfriends. She says, people used to say, and it's a little true, that the Beatles were hoodlums acting like gentlemen, and the Stones were gentlemen acting like hoodlums. So I don't know. So that was a good quote.
That is a pretty good quote. I like that.
Who knows? But they
I
kind
like
of
that.
talk about that,
Yeah.
how they're all, they're all buddies and everything like that. And another good. This is more of a somber, but Keith Richards was talking about Brian Jones. Brian Jones passed away. Um, he died in a swimming pool. I believe it was July 3rd. And the spooky thing, and they talk about in the book too. They illustrate this. I don't want to spoil everything for the people to enjoy it, but he owned the house of the guy who wrote Winnie the Pooh. So he had so when he passed away, there's old statues of Tigger and Piglet around. You know what I mean? So talk about a spooky thing. But obviously, Keith Richards was a drug addict for a very long time. But he said, Keith Richards says this: "There is a demon in me, but just one. Brian had 45 of them." One of the reasons why the Stones broke up in the 80s was like I said, this book, I read other books, but this actually got deeper in it that when they renewed their contract with their label, they put a part of the contract that Mick Jagger had to release a solo album. So, and they didn't, and the rest of the guys didn't know that. So, that turned them off.
Yeah, I'm sure the band didn't love that.
Yeah. And
But you know what I always find, even when you have these really big bands and these popular bands, when they do a solo album, it's just never as good.
Yeah.
It just never really takes off. I mean, You think about even like the Beatles, right? Because we've been
Yes.
talking about them in this
Mhm.
episode. I mean, sure, John Lennon and Paul McCartney had some hit songs on their own, but I wouldn't. They've never reached that level of success they did when they were together.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but they have other quotes of like when they like because Keith Richards put out his own solo crap, and
Yeah.
like I said, there's a lot of great quotes in here that I laughed out loud. Like their drummer Charlie Watts says, I mean, they have really great quotes in here, but Keith Richards says basically like. I realized at one point I'm like, yeah, we're a lot better together. So, but it's really funny stuff in there. Like it's really good. And he has another great line in there. Like the only way you're leaving this band is in a coffin. So they were really upset when their bass player left, like in like '91. But PJ, before I say my last thing about the book, I just want to go on a slight rant because it's just something that's
Okay.
always irked me. It has nothing to do with the book, but because like I said, it talks a lot about Brian Jones, and when I go to Stone shows, I go to tribute bands, blah blah blah. I just meet other casual fans. They'll be like, "Oh, Mike, who's your favorite member?" I say, "I really don't have one. It's hard for me to say." But I'll be like, "Oh, what's your favorite album?" I always say like Goat's Head Soup or Let It Bleed or Sticky Fingers or whatever. And I go, "Well,
Right.
who's your favorite member?" And lots of times folks say like Brian Jones. I go, "Oh, that's," I'm like, "Oh yeah." They're like, "Yeah, I just think that was like their most creative and all that stuff." And then but PJ, here comes the part that kind of gets me like, I think some people are, I want to say phony balonies, but I think they are though, because I go, "Well, what's your favorite album?" And they'll name like, um, let's say "Tattoo You," right? Or "Some
Okay.
Girls." He's not even on that album. He was dead. So I always go, "Well, you know, uh, your favorite album, he's not even on it," And then they go like humming, you know what I mean? So I think sometimes, that's like when people go like, "Who's like, oh, what's your, like your favorite, Beatle?" And they'll say George, or "What's your favorite song by George?" And they don't name a song he wrote.
Right.
It's like, well, I
Right.
don't know. I mean, shouldn't it go hand in hand? I don't know. Anyway, this always turned me off. Maybe that's like the very diehard, meticulous. You're probably the same way with comic books. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
someone says their favorite, storyline is this by this author, but it's really not, doesn't
It's
really
not.
match up.
Yep.
It's
Happens a
like,
lot. Yeah.
it's like you're not sure if they're like just innocently just, happens to be their
Right.
favorite. It doesn't have to be both, but
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't you feel like there's a little bit of like, a little bit like, I don't know, I can't say, just like phony baloney to it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like this. It's like I feel like it's the cool answer to say my favorite Stone is
Yep.
Brian Jones, where like you really don't know
Right.
shit about him, or you may not even like his work as much as you think you do, But
Yeah. The equivalent in comics is like when someone will say how their favorite comic book is some indie book that no one's ever heard of, and you just like you just want to sound cool because you're saying that,
yes,
but you
exactly.
just want to sound cool because you're like, oh, no one knows about my underground indie comic book, but this is
Right.
the best comic book that ever exists. It's like you just want to sound cool. If that's
Yes.
your favorite, you couldn't name another book that the author or artist has done.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even realize that this book that you think is so underground indie is being written and drawn by the most mainstream DC or Marvel creators anyway. And this is like a side thing for them. And those same people that wrote your crazy indie book also do and love the most mainstream comic book telling. I
Yes.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same
So
thing. It's
it's
like, come on. You're
yeah,
just
it just
trying to.
irks me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I appreciate let me do that rant. Before I forget, one last thing about this book. They talk about his Keith Richards guitar tuning, and they actually take a segment to actually illustrate how to do the
Really?
tuning. Yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool. So you play guitar, you're always curious what it is that this book can help you with open G tuning. So I laughed out loud because it even says we got guitarist, forgot the gentleman's name, and they show, oh, it's open G. Anyway, so if you play guitar, you'll also appreciate that section of the book too. Folks at home, definitely check out the Rolling Stones in comics. I said, if you're a diehard fan, you're going to enjoy it. If you're a casual fan, you'll definitely enjoy it. In terms of our Cool Kids rating system, I would give it a pizza.
All right.
Yeah, so it's definitely
Pretty high praise.
and
Pretty
it's
high
not
praise.
crazy expensive anyway, too. It's it's really not that bad. I think it's like 15 now or 20,
it's not
which is
bad.
not that bad at all. And like I said, that same publisher, maybe if the Stones aren't your fancy, like I said, they have the Beatles, they have Pink Floyd, I think they have the Who, like I said, Amy Winehouse, Bob Marley, Willie Nelson, and I'm assuming it's the same kind of setup where it's like 20 essays and then they have
Right.
the comic illustrate that story. But yeah, definitely recommend it.
Great. Well, I'm glad you like that
Yeah,
book.
thanks, PJ. Yay, Santa PJ.
I
Yay, Santa Claus
yes,
PJ.
I am. I'm glad you liked it. It sounds like it's a book other people might enjoy. So there's been a lot of crossover lately with comic books and music, and maybe a couple of months ago they did a typo negative comic book.
Oh wow.
So that was I didn't get a chance to read it because it sold out. I bought a couple of copies. It's not something I would buy like 1,000 of these, right?
Yeah.
I bought a handful and put them out before I even got a chance to read when they sold out. There is a much bigger crossover for music and comics than I think than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
Gerard Way, I mean, he's a rock star,
Mhm.
and he created the Umbrella Academy.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, there's a big crossover
Yeah.
between comics and music, and I think it makes sense that there's a big crossover. There's a lot of
Yeah.
similarities in the storytelling. So,
Yeah.
but I'm glad you like that book, and I'm glad to hear it got a good review from you.
Yeah. And actually, real quick, folks, PJ for Free Comic Book Day gave me some free comic books, and he gave me it was called Def Leppard, and obviously it's like what any free comic book day usually it's a preview to get
Right,
you
yep.
interested. So just to give you guys a synopsis of that, it was pretty cool. Basically, I think it starts off with this haunted evil guitar. It kind of reminds you of like the movie Christine,
Okay.
not the guitar kills people, but it's basically haunted,
Right.
or it has
Yeah.
bad omen to it, and it's about this, I guess, like indie band, and then this girl's like they're running out of, the shows aren't going well, and she goes, well, I know my dad or my uncle has a guitar in storage. It happens to be that guitar. So there's in that first copy, there's nothing that has anything with the band Def Leppard in it. I'm assuming, I guess, throughout their
They'll show up at some point.
exactly,
Yeah.
and maybe that's why the drummer lost his arm. Who knows? But, and then PJ also gave me one with Post Malone's. I can't remember the comic book title, but basically it's like a zombie apocalypse.
Big Rig or something like that.
Yeah. Good memory. And
Yeah.
he's not in it. I think the main
I
character.
think he just wrote it.
Yeah, it kind of resembles him. Guy's a lot of tattoos,
Okay.
blah blah blah. But yeah, he drives a big giant semi truck to kill zombies. So
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of crossover between
Yep.
music and comics, and I think that creativity is the reason why. These musicians and musical artists have a lot of creativity in their brains, and there's more than one way to get it out. So,
Yep.
but I'm glad you like those books too. Free Comic Book Day was the first Saturday in May, and it was a huge success for us. And the Def Leppard one and the Post Malone ones were actually two of the more successful ones that we gave out, because people relate to that, right? They know who
Yeah.
Def Leppard is. There's some books out there that are free, but no one knows what they are because they're so like
Yeah.
niche and they're so like, what is this? But everyone knows Def Leppard. Everyone knows Post Malone these days, and those are very popular books. So I'm hoping everyone who picked up the free issue comes back to get the real issue when it comes out.
Yeah. So Pissa PJ, sure. I think you said you had, what was it, Superman, right?
Yes. So I thought I would take a little bit of time to talk about DC's new initiative, a marketing campaign, whatever you want to call it. They are gearing up hardcore for the new Superman movie coming out in July.
Ah, that makes sense.
And so what they've done is create several what they call jumping on points for the comic books. And they're calling it the Summer of Superman. Because what they're hoping, what their marketing people are hoping is that everyone's going to want to see this movie. People are going to love this movie. People are going to be in the mood for Superman. But when you go into a comic book store and you see that, Action Comics is up to issue, I don't know, but it's up to like issue 1070, 1080, whatever it is.
Yeah.
People feel like, how do I jump into a book that's 1,000 issues deep?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what they've done is create this marketing plan, and what they're calling it is the Summer of Superman. Sounds great, rolls right off the tongue.
So I thought you were going to say Summer of Sam. I'm like, oh my God.
Summer of
this
Sam,
is a
yeah.
dark
Oh, the
Superman
Summer of
storyline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real dark
Everyone's
take. I'll tell you
targeting
that,
brunettes and Lois
Yeah.
Lanes. Okay.
yeah. So, well, now
Actually,
that
that
you
would be
mention it,
that'd be good. That'd be a good storyline, because you would have more of a Clark Kent story where he's on
Yeah.
the beat, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Hey, you know what? We got to push that. We got to go
Yeah.
to DC. We got to make an appointment because
Summer of Superman. All right.
yeah, the Summer of Superman. And it kicked off with the Summer of Superman special. The Summer of Superman special. Let me get my notes out just to give some info. Was released on the 16th of April, which is arguably nowhere near the summer. It's still the spring, but it was like their kickoff event to kind of show what the next bunch of books would be about, right? Like So it takes place at the wedding of John Henry Irons and Lana Lang. If you're not a comic book fan, John Henry Irons is Steel. He was one of the characters that were introduced during the death of Superman and has stood that test of time. Is still one of the more popular DC characters. Lana Lang, most famous from Smallville, the TV show Smallville. She's been in the comics since probably, I don't know, the 50s or so, but most popular from the TV show on the CW Smallville. Again, long running character. So they're getting married in the comic book. They got married on the CW Lois and Superman show, Superman and Lois. So that's something that they brought in from different mediums to the comic books. But that was basically their first one, and it kind of shows what the next couple of months of Superman are going to be about. There'll be some fallout from some battles that happened in that issue. This is the first time they let us know that Clark Kent was Superboy. So if you're not too familiar with the comic books, like in your mind, you might know that Clark Kent started as Superboy, right? That's something that everyone kind of has in their mind. What you may not realize is that in the 80s, they retconned that so that it never actually happened.
Oh.
And he just became Superman as an adult. And there's been several stories back and forth where sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. They're bringing that element back into continuity where Clark Kent started his superheroing career as a teenager in Smallville. So it introduces that concept back into the stories. And they're going to follow up on that in another book, which is coming out later that I'll talk about. But so that's kind of what the first book was, just setting the stage, right?
Yeah.
So that was called the Summer of Superman Special. And that, like I said, came out on the 16th of April. We still have some in stock, I believe, if anyone is interested in it. The next big thing to come out was Superman number 25. 25th issue of the current volume of Superman was an oversized issue. And it came out on April 23rd. And this was just like, I call it a celebratory issue because 25, but comic books, issue 1, 25, 50 with Superman comic book 75 is a big number. There's always like a special anniversary issue. This was a little bit of a double-sized issue. It was longer. It finished up some storylines that have been running to make way for new storylines. So they consider this part of the Summer of Superman. It was a very good book. There's been a storyline running through the Superman comic books where Lex kind of loses his memories. So he's not completely lost his memory, but he doesn't really remember being evil. He's still super smart. He's a good businessman, all that other stuff, but he doesn't really remember being evil. He doesn't remember why he was evil, any of that stuff. So it was interesting because now you're familiar with LexCorp, right? Like that's Lex Luthor's business.
Yeah.
It becomes Supercorp. He gives it to Superman, and Superman now has this big, giant building in the heart of Metropolis that's being run by a Lex Luthor on the side of good, and they're trying to save the city. They've been working together, and now all of a sudden the evil side is starting to wake back up, and that's part of the story. It's pretty cool. You find out he's been building a clone body of himself, but it's Kryptonian. So now there's a Lex with superpowers that has all the evil memories from Lex. So it's like a lot of stuff going on. Again, very good book. That one came out already. We have a couple of issues of that left in stock. But they're trying to do like different things to keep people interested in Superman.
Yeah.
They've also introduced a new comic book that came out on May 14th, so pretty recent, only like a week or two ago.
Yes.
A new Supergirl book, Supergirl number 1.
Hmm.
The rumor is Supergirl will be in the Superman movie.
Yeah.
And so if that's them reintroducing a new Supergirl book right now, makes me feel like she's definitely going to be in it, because why else would you have a new Supergirl movie coming out. If you're introducing the character in the new Superman movie, makes sense. And this is a mystery book where all of a sudden there are 2 different Supergirls running around, and which is the real one, which is the fake one. Do they know they're real or fake? It was an interesting book, the Supergirl book. And I'm just going through these at a high level because there's so many of them. The art style, I hate to use the word girly. I don't want to use that word.
Yeah, I think I know.
But it's certainly not a gritty book. It's certainly not a realistically drawn book. It's not over the top actiony looking where you would, picture a traditional Superman comic to look like. It's a more softer, delicate art style. so I think it'd be more palatable to a female audience, which is probably what they're going for a Supergirl book.
Is there
The art
action?
is good.
Is there action in it? Or
There's
is it...
some, this is really a setup issue, so she's not really fighting
All
anybody
right.
yet.
So
She's saving some people here and there.
yeah.
She's Supergirl, so that's what she does. There's no big brawl scene or anything like that in this book yet. I'm sure one will come. There's two Supergirls. At some point they're going to fight. But it's definitely a book that it's more suitable for different age brackets, right? There's really nothing in this where you would say, oh, this kid shouldn't read this one. Nothing scary like that, at least in the first issue. It's more palatable for a female audience. Looks like with this book, they're trying to capture more than just the regular target Superman audience.
Yeah.
And I think the reason they're doing that is maybe they're saying, well, we want more people than just the target audience to see this movie.
Right.
So it makes sense that they're doing it.
Yeah.
It was actually a well-written book. I like the mystery of it. I wouldn't call the art a turnoff. It's not bad by any stretch, the art. It really isn't. It's just not traditionally what you would see in a Superman book. And this is a Supergirl book. I know it's different. But if you're thinking you're going to go in looking for like a Jim Lee style art, you're not getting it. The next book that came out was called Superman Unlimited. It's a #1 issue, a perfect jumping on point for a new reader because it is a #1. So it's starting at the beginning of a story. This book was teased during Free Comic Book Day. It was one of the previews that they gave out. And it starts off with there's a new status quo for the Daily Planet, which I think is a really cool direction they're taking. It's not just a metropolitan newspaper anymore.
Right.
It is a news conglomerate. So maybe there's a TV portion, mainstream media, an online presence, a social media presence, the newspaper. They're making it into a bigger corporation.
Yeah.
And the head of this corporation, or the person running the business, is no longer Perry White. It's Lois Lane is now the editor-in-chief.
Okay.
She's the publisher. She's the whatever you want to call her. So she's now the top of the Daily Planet. Perry White is now the mayor of Metropolis, which is a pretty cool thing. Again, trying to change up the status quo so that when someone jumps into it now, it's an even jumping on point for everyone. But really cool changes. Like, it makes sense that after all this time, if anyone else is going to run the Daily Planet, it should be Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Right? It makes a lot of sense in terms of storytelling. It's familiar for people, but still being different. That makes now Clark Kent the top reporter because the top reporter is always Lois, and then Clark is there, but he doesn't write the big stories because really he's Superman.
Yeah.
So he can't necessarily write every one of these stories, but now Clark has to be the top reporter because Lois is running it. So how is that going to impact things, right?
Yeah.
So it introduces a new story element. The book starts with him just being Superman, saving a bunch of people, and all of a sudden a meteor is heading towards Earth. He goes to stop the meteor from destroying Earth. You find out the meteor is made of kryptonite. It's a remnant from the planet. And I won't go into the rest of the story because I don't want to spoil anything, but you could kind of get a feel for where this might be going.
Right.
Really well written. That came out on the 21st of May, so just a week ago.
And what's that one called again?
Superman Unlimited #1. Yeah. So that was a really fun book, good art. It's written by Dan Slott, who is been a comic book writer for a long time.
I love when Superman has to like think his way through it. So those are like the best with him. Those are his most interesting. That's awesome.
Yeah, this was a really good book. The next book that's going to be hitting isn't out yet, but it's Action Comics 1087. It's going to be coming out the 11th of June. This is the book that's going to really introduce Superboy Clark Kent as Superboy back into the continuity. I can't talk much about it because it's not out yet, other than to say it's being written by Mark Waid, who is maybe one of the best comic book writers of all time. And he's also going to be doing another book soon, The History of the DC Universe. He is basically going to tell you in that comic book what counts, right? So many stories are taken out of continuity, redone, changed. Yeah. He is putting out a book published by DC Comics, a comic book, that says this is the definitive history. These are the things that happened. This is when they happened. This is how it all ties together. So that'll be a pretty interesting book. They're going to be launching another book on June 18th. Crypto, the Last Dog of Krypton.
Oh, okay.
So they're again, he's in the movie, so
Yeah.
they're tying everything back to this movie in as many ways as they can. That book will be out on June 18th. I read an advanced digital copy of it. A preview, it's not the full book, and it looks as though we know Superman's rocketed to Earth as a baby
Yeah.
because the planet's going to explode. But you can't just put a baby in a rocket. You got to test it first. And it looks like
Ah.
Crypto might have been the test subject. And it's not an animal abuse story because they have no idea things are going to go wrong. The family, the Jor-El, Lara, baby Kal-El, they all love this dog and things go wrong. And, there is a cool twist that I don't want to spoil, but spoiler alert for the next couple of seconds. Cover your ears if you don't want to hear it. Crypto gets to Earth first because they test the rocket first. He knows nobody. He's a stray dog, right? Developing all these powers because he's Kryptonian.
Yeah.
And he has no one there. And the person that finds him and looks like is going to take care of him and show this new stray dog, some sort of kindness, looks like it's going to be Lex Luthor.
Oh, interesting.
Cool twist, right?
Yeah.
Cool twist. So then there's that. The next book that'll be coming out is a hardcover book called Superman the World. This is going to be a hardcover of short stories, much like the Rolling Stones book.
Yep.
But all of the artists and writers and creators are from different countries.
Oh, cool.
So one story will be done by Dan Jurgens from the United States. Then there's going to be a story by some folks from Argentina, Brazil, all sorts of countries. And they're going to tell a story about how Superman has impacted their life in their country, sort of a thing.
Right. So it makes sense. Superman, the world.
The world.
Yeah. So.
Yep. There's going to be a children's book coming out called Superman's Good Guy Gang.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all ages. It's very cartoony art. It's
It's
really for the littlest of kids. This will be coming out in July. The characters in the book appear to be Superman, Hawkgirl, and Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. Again, the same people from the movie. They are doing everything they can to make this comic book tie into this movie so they make as much money as possible. And then finally, they're going to be doing the thing I'm most excited for.
Ew.
Is a Treasury edition. I don't know if you know what a Treasury edition is.
No, sir.
For the longest time, they used to call these books, they were oversized books. They're big comic books. Like you can't, I'm not talking magazine size, bigger than a magazine, like just big books.
Right. They're not hardcover. They're like.
No, they're like regular floppy comic books, but they're just
bigger.
Bigger. They're not, like I said, I'm not talking a magazine, bigger than a magazine, maybe even a little bigger than a newspaper. In fact, maybe I even have the dimensions. The dimensions are 10 1/8 inches by 13 5/16 inches. So a bigger book.
Yeah.
Means you can appreciate the art more, right? Because you can really see it. And they haven't done new Treasury editions. They've done reprints of old ones. They haven't done a new Treasury edition in what feels like a million years.
Damn.
And they're bringing this format of comic books back in the Superman Treasury 2025 Hero for All. And I'm just really excited about it because the creative team is great. Dan Jurgens and Bruno Redondo are going to be working on it. But the idea that they're going to bring back a historical, popular comic book format, starting with Superman, just feels right. So I'm a big fan of that. That will also be out the beginning of July. So DC is really speaking to me on a personal level because my favorite character has always been Superman. And every week for the last couple of months and through the next couple of months has been giving a brand new Superman book.
Yeah.
And I'm biased because I love the character. I get it. But there have been some real clunker stories. All of these have been good.
Yeah.
They're selling out off the shelves. You only have a few left of each of the books when they come out. People really are enjoying them. They're getting back into Superman in a way they haven't in a real long time. I'm not gonna bash Scott Snyder. I liked a lot of what he did in those movies. I've gone on record saying that. But I think DC Warner Brothers realized that's not Superman. And as much as everyone on the internet wants to hate on what we've seen from the new movie, DC is really going back and embracing that he is a hopeful character. He's not a dark character. He You know,
Yeah.
it's not about just the powers. It's
Yeah.
about the personality. And,
Yeah.
and as they go back to those basics, it's really clicking for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think with the recent trailer, I think it does a good job of going back old school Superman, and also there's a little, like, I'll say there's a toughness to it. It's
Yes.
not like, you know,
Yes.
it's not like totally that. It's a little bit,
Right.
maybe a little left of center, but it seems
Right.
like there's a decent balance, still decent
Yes.
balance there. So,
And this is funny. I wanted to show you a cover of one of the books, one of the variant covers for Superman Unlimited #1.
oh,
James Gunn put himself on the book. The Superman that they gave us is very clearly the one from the movie.
Right.
Is a little cross promotion.
Yeah,
So I thought that was
that's pretty
I
cool.
thought that was pretty funny, pretty cool. Yeah. They're like I said, they're really doing what they can to promote this movie, tie everything together. If I had to rate using our rating system right now,
Yes.
all of what we've seen of Summer of Superman, I would give all of these collective books pizza and French fries.
Wow. Okay.
Very, very high. The only reason not chicken nuggets is because these stories aren't over yet, and I don't know if they're gonna stay at this high quality or if anything's gonna change. But yeah, all of the comic books in the Superman line right now are tying into the Summer of Superman. Head down to your favorite local comic book store, which should be Cool Kids Comics and Toys, located at 2055 Hempstead Turnpike in East Meadow. If you've listened to this episode and you come to the shop and give the code at the register, Chicken Nuggets will give you 10% off your purchase. So if you've listened to the show, you're in the area, come down to the shop, let us know you've listened, give us the code Chicken Nugget, and we'll give you a discount on your purchase in the store. Yeah, but that's what's going on in the comic book world.
Excellent, PJ. And PJ, before we wrap up, while I was listening to you, I thought of a question, and I want to ask to you. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know what you call this category, but I'll call it like I guess who's the best like business owner? Okay. So is it Wayne?
Okay.
Which is the best? Wayne Enterprises versus LexCorp versus Stark Industry. Who's the best one? Who's got the best business?
Who's got the most successful business?
Yeah. Or yeah, like successful, like in everything. Not even just monetarily, just like
okay.
Power, the whole shebang.
I would say,
and I just rank them 1, 2, 3. Obviously, 1 being
1,
the
2,
best.
3.
Yeah.
I think the first one is Lex.
Yes, I was gonna say.
I think
if
Lex,
you're a bad guy, you gotta have a banging business.
Yeah, it's got right.
That's just kind of how it goes.
I would actually give number 2 to someone you don't have on your list. I would go Oscorp.
Oh, I was trying to think of other ones while we were thinking about this.
Yeah,
so
I would say Oscorp.
Right, another
the villains always have a better business.
Yeah.
And then I'd probably give it to. I would give it to Bruce Wayne, and then I would give it to Tony Stark. Tony Stark is constantly losing control over his business.
Right.
Just constantly someone else is taking over. And so Tony needs to get some better executives in there or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because how many times is he going to get bought out and have to buy his company back? But I definitely think Lex and Norman are the top 2.
Yeah.
The villains always run a better business.
Yeah. That's funny, man. I know I was trying to think of something else. I'm like, what am I? I'm like, it's not the Braxtor building. I'm like, who is it? And that was it. Okay, good, perfect. So, all right, nice. So yeah, folks, definitely check out the Rolling Stones and comics, and then check out Summer of Superman. Well, thanks for listening, folks. Same time, same table.
Have a good one.
Boys and girls, lunchtime is over. For more information, visit their website at coolkidslunchtable.podbean.com. Follow the boys on all social media platforms. Just search Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast. Now get to class before you get detention.